The terrifying truth. Why Satan fought so hard for Moses' body. Picture yourself standing atop Mount Nebo, surrounded by the profound stillness of a night that seems to suspend time itself. Moses, the extraordinary man who conversed with God face to face and led an entire nation through the parted waters of the Red Sea, has just drawn his final breath. Yet as celestial beings prepare to provide him with a dignified burial in a location that no mortal will ever discover, the atmosphere transforms dramatically. The air becomes thick, frigid, and saturated with an ancient malevolence. From the darkest corners of the spiritual realm, a presence emerges that causes all creation to tremble. Satan himself has arrived to claim something that, according to his twisted logic, rightfully belongs to him. But why would the Prince of Darkness risk direct confrontation with Archangel Michael over a man whose earthly journey had already ended? The Epistle of Jude gives us only a fleeting glimpse of this epic cosmic battle that most believers completely overlook. Today, we're diving deeper than surface level. The question that has baffled scholars for centuries isn't merely about what transpired, but why it happened at all. What sinister plan did the enemy have for the mortal remains of this legendary prophet? Was his intention to weaponize the body to unleash idolatry that would destroy Israel? Or was there something significant about Moses' nature that Satan needed for his own prophetic purposes, especially considering what would later occur at the Transfiguration? Before we go further, I need you to do something right now. If you're finding value in this deep dive into biblical mysteries, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss another revelation about the spiritual warfare happening all around us. Your support helps us continue bringing you these hidden truths. Now, let's uncover the terrifying reality behind this celestial confrontation. Get ready, because what you're about to discover represents the shocking truth concealed behind this heavenly siege. We're going to excavate the secrets buried in that lonely, unmarked grave and reveal why the devil was willing to fight until the end for Moses' physical remains. This isn't simply a narrative about death. This is a revelation about the invisible war waged for the souls of humanity and the legacy of God's chosen. Stay until the end, because your perspective on spiritual battles will be fundamentally transformed. The breeze sweeping across Mount Nebo's summit carried a biting chill. The descending sunlight cast elongated shadows across barren rocks, while massive clouds obscured the horizon of the promised land below. There, standing alone with garments rippling in wind, Moses waited in solemn contemplation. This wasn't anxious waiting of someone fearing death. Rather, it was patient expectation of someone who understood his appointed time had been measured to the final heartbeat. For 4 decades, he had shepherded God's people through merciless deserts, navigating bitter rebellions. Now, at 120 years, his eyes still sparkled with vitality. However, his physical body no longer responded with former vigor. The silence was absolute. No witnesses, no disciples. Only stones, wind, and the Almighty's presence. From this vantage point, Moses surveyed lush valleys, the Jordan River snaking through the landscape, distant Jericho rooftops. For so many years, he had yearned to cross into that territory. But Yahweh's words had been firm. You shall not cross over. Moses closed his eyes with profound peace. No desperate cries, no pleas. Only a long exhalation dissolving into mountain air. The man who witnessed the burning bush unconsumed by flames, who parted the Red Sea, who conversed with the Creator as friend speaks with friend, collapsed to the ground in silence. Yet he wasn't alone. At the precise moment his spirit departed, something invisible descended, not accompanied by earthquakes or lightning. This was something more intimate, more sacred. The Almighty himself descended with reverent silence, honoring a beloved friend. He personally took possession of his prophet's body. Scripture states this without embellishment. And Moses died there, and he buried him in the valley. No one else. The scene faded. The mountain remained empty. All footprints erased by wind. The people, camped at a distance, waited, but Moses never returned. And to this day, No one knows his burial location. Darkness fell over the valley. No human lamentation, no funeral songs. The people had no idea their leader had departed. Somewhere hidden among Moab's slopes, something occurred that would never repeat. Not a mortal who excavated the grave. God himself bent down over Moses' lifeless body. The sacred text simply states, "He buried him." This seemingly simple detail contains unbearable theological weight. The Creator personally performing a gesture reserved for closest family. Moses' body was treated with dignity no royal funeral could equal. Yet something crucial was absent. No marker, no monument, as if earth was instructed to guard this secret. Neither Joshua nor elders were made aware of the location. Moses' tomb was concealed before it could become a pilgrimage destination. Why such measures? Because God knew something the people weren't prepared to handle. Israel had demonstrated a dangerous tendency to transform memories into worship objects. A tomb or relic would corrupt pure worship. The man who spoke with God face to face could not transform into a devotion object. This invisible burial served as protection of the body and of Israel itself. Yet this act awakened something sinister in spiritual realms. Because while the tomb was sealed far from human knowledge, someone else observed from darkness. And this observer refused to accept this silence. Throughout centuries, countless individuals attempted to imagine where Moses' body might rest. Some claimed it was hidden among Pisgah Valley's rocks. Others insisted the mountain had swallowed it. No human ever discovered even the slightest trace. This deliberate absence became a persistent mystery. Moses' death wasn't merely one life's conclusion. It marked the inauguration of deliberate silence communicating. Do not search here. However, this void also attracted speculation. Rabbis, mystics, travelers dreamed of breaking through the divine secret. Ancient legends claimed angels stood guard with flaming swords. Within ancient texts, some believed Satan himself attempted to claim this body. The first indication of cosmic battle didn't appear in Old Testament scriptures. Instead, it surfaced in a brief letter hidden among the New Testament's final echoes. There, a single line shattered the silence. Jude, verse 9. But when the archangel Michael, contending with the devil, was disputing about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." Nothing more is said. This isolated verse functions like a crack in reality's fabric. Through this opening, we glimpse a moment witnessed by no human, yet clearly occurring in heavenly realms. A silent celestial conflict, hidden from human eyes, but preserved within inspired text. Why would Jude mention something so specific, then abandon it without explanation? This verse disturbs because it refuses comfortable answers. It presents a stark image, a body, two beings of immense power, and a dispute ancient as creation. Michael wasn't dispatched as mere messenger. The archangel descended as a warrior prepared for combat. Unlike Gabriel, Michael doesn't appear throughout Scripture as spokesperson. He appears as warrior, defender against spiritual forces. His very name carries profound meaning. Who is like God? This is a declaration of war against every attempt to supplant divine authority. In Daniel's visions, Michael is revealed as the great prince defending God's people, actively resisting darkness forces. He serves as commanding general of the heavenly host, fighting not with eloquent words, but with holy fire. His presence is never incidental. When Michael appears, something of grave importance is at stake. Therefore, when Jude reveals it was Michael specifically who descended, the text takes on completely different weight. This wasn't peaceful ceremony. This was active confrontation. Moses' body, even in death, possessed tremendous strategic, symbolic, prophetic value. And the enemy wouldn't relinquish it without attempting to seize it. Yet here something extraordinary occurs. Michael, despite incalculable power, doesn't pronounce condemnation upon Satan using his own authority. He simply states, "The Lord rebuke you." This response speaks about holy obedience, not personal pride, as if Michael understood that ultimate justice doesn't belong to him, but to the one who sent him. This subtle detail has puzzled generations of interpreters, because it doesn't fit with popular images of good confronting evil with dramatic thunder. Here, heaven's messenger acts with profound reverence, even when standing face to face with the universe's most ancient adversary. And this raises a deeper question. Why did God dispatch Michael personally? What made this particular body so valuable it warranted this level of angelic protection? When Satan appeared at Moses' body location, he didn't arrive with open violence. He came bearing a legal claim, presenting formal accusation. Because Satan is the accuser, the eternal prosecutor constantly searching for flaws. And Moses, despite being a prophet, was far from sinless. In the wilderness, he had struck the rock in anger when God commanded him to speak to it. He had doubted God's provision. These were the reasons he wasn't permitted to enter the promised land. And Satan, possessing perfect memory, arrived to present his twisted case. This body is not worthy of any heavenly rest. This man failed repeatedly. He sinned. And since death is the result of sin, this body rightfully belongs to me. But his argument extended beyond claiming the body as trophy. He wanted it as a symbol, a tool, a weapon to be wielded against God's people. If Satan could take control of Moses' body, he could convert it into an idol, into a monument. The man who spoke directly with the Almighty could be transformed into earthly worship object, diverting true worship from the invisible God. The tomb would transform into elaborate altar. The prophet's legacy would become spiritual prison. The idolatry Israel had embraced throughout history would be renewed with devastating force. This time it wouldn't involve golden calves or pagan altars. Instead, it would center on the prophet himself, the very body that had guided the people, now converted into a stumbling block. Satan's plan wasn't simply to dishonor Moses. His ultimate goal was to sabotage Israel entirely, to divert their faith from the living God. And perhaps the enemy intuited something more significant, because centuries later, on another mountain, this same Moses would appear alive, conversing with Jesus during the Transfiguration. Did Satan somehow know this body would rise again and play a crucial role? Did he fear its assigned part in a larger plan? Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. Michael did not yield. He didn't engage in lengthy arguments. He simply responded with a phrase that continues to resonate, "The Lord rebuke you." And with that declaration, the body was preserved, not through force, but through divine authority. The enemy was silenced and forced to withdraw empty-handed. There existed something dangerous about Moses' body, making it a target worthy of Satan's attention. This danger lay in what it represented to an entire nation's consciousness. Moses wasn't just another man. He was the living embodiment of the law, the voice that spoke from divine fire on Sinai, the liberator who split the Red Sea. Throughout generations, his figure had grown exponentially in Israel's consciousness, approaching something almost divine. And Satan knew this vulnerability could be exploited. If this body had been revealed and preserved, it would have rapidly transformed into cultic worship object. The people who had fallen into idolatry's trap so many times would not have possessed spiritual strength to resist. They would have constructed elaborate sanctuaries around the burial site. They would have erected impressive altars. They would have undertaken long pilgrimages just to touch the ground where the prophet lay. Every grain of sand would have been considered blessed. Every stone would have been coveted as sacred relic. And the vibrant story of Moses would have been reduced to static statue, stripped of dynamic power. The idolatry would have changed its form, but not its destructive nature. Because worshipping a physical body or venerating a location is no different spiritually from bowing before a golden calf. And Satan didn't need to destroy God's people with armies. All he needed was to divert their worship away from where it belonged. Imagine if God hadn't hidden Moses' body. Picture Israel's kings dividing the kingdom to control access to this sacred tomb. Envision Pharisees establishing doctrinal systems centered around dust from the burial site. Imagine wars fought purely for possession of the sepulchre. Satan perceived far beyond the corpse value. He saw the immense potential for spiritual corruption this body represented. His intention wasn't to destroy or desecrate it. What he wanted was for it to be found, to be seen, to be converted into the center of fundamentally distorted faith. Because the enemy knew that if people began to worship the servant, they would forget the master. If their devotion centered on the created rather than the creator, their spiritual vision would be fatally compromised. And this outcome would represent complete victory without shedding blood. A prophet's body sometimes carries more power than even his words, because it speaks without speaking, because it provokes memory without teaching, because it summons emotional responses without requiring rituals. And Satan understood how to weaponize this. If people could touch this body, if they wept over remains, if they deposited hopes at that tomb rather than directing them toward heaven, then they would no longer require genuine faith in invisible God. Moses' body's spiritual weight possessed potential to drag entire generations into empty religion, clothed in emotional experiences and ceremonies, but devoid of actual divine presence. In essence, it was the perfect bait. This is why God hid it with deliberate care. Not out of disrespect, but out of mercy. Not because of forgetfulness, but because of foresight and protective love. What is deliberately hidden sometimes provides greatest protection from spiritual corruption. And what cannot be touched often remains spiritually pure. But this purity was exactly what Satan found intolerable. Because where absence creates space, genuine faith can flourish. And where authentic faith grows strong, the enemy's power weakens. Sometimes time's threads interweave in patterns only heaven comprehends. What appears to have ended is often only beginning its most important phase. Moses' body wasn't simply a historical record. It was still an active piece positioned within God's eternal design. Because Moses was never destined to simply disappear. Many centuries later, on another mountain, the Mount of Transfiguration, his feet would again touch earthly ground. There, before astonished eyes of Peter, James, and John, Moses appeared in glorious form alongside Elijah, conversing with Jesus. He didn't manifest as vague shadow. He appeared with unmistakable presence, fully alive and glorified. And this moment changes everything about our understanding of why Satan fought for the body. What did this appearance imply? Had Moses been resurrected? Had he been preserved in unique manner by divine will? Did his body have a signed prophetic role still needing fulfillment? The question becomes unsettling. If Satan had obtained control, could he have prevented that future appearance? Could the enemy have interrupted the prophetic manifestation of Moses standing alongside the Messiah? What was at stake wasn't just a corpse. It was a crucial link in prophetic chain connecting Old Covenant to New. It was future manifestation of kingdom breaking into time. Moses, serving as ultimate symbol of ancient covenant, needed to appear alongside Jesus before new covenant could be established. Satan perhaps perceived this body story wasn't finished, that there would be return, that testimony remained to be given. And if he could truncate that return, he would gain tactical advantage in his war against divine purposes. This is why he wanted the body desperately. This is why he disputed its possession fiercely. This is why he risked confrontation with Michael, even knowing he couldn't ultimately prevail. Because if he could interrupt even one detail of prophetic timeline, he might plant chaos within God's plan. But the Almighty's plan cannot be halted by hands emerging from shadow. The body was successfully guarded. The prophet was perfectly preserved. And redemption's story was shielded from enemy corruption. The mountain stood wrapped in profound silence. Jesus had ascended with 3 disciples, Peter, James, and John. None understood what was about to unfold. And then, without warning, it happened. Jesus' face began to shine with the sun's brilliance. His garments transformed, becoming white as pure light. And in that instant when light shattered reality, Moses appeared. The same Moses who led Israel through wilderness. Not as vague figure, but as complete man, engaged in dialogue with God's incarnate Son. Standing beside him was Elijah. Together they stood, law and prophets, positioned alongside promise made flesh. Peter, overwhelmed, wanted to build something permanent. But this impulse was not permitted, because this appearance wasn't designed to be fixed in place. This was divine testimony being delivered. Moses had returned from wherever God preserved him. The body Satan attempted to claim, the prophet buried in secret, he now stood there, illuminated by Christ's glory. And his appearance confirmed with undeniable evidence that death is not the final word. It demonstrated that what had been planted in secret would blossom at appointed time. This is the terrifying truth most people miss. There are darkness forces understanding prophetic significance better than believers. There are battles waged over bodies, legacies, symbols, futures not yet unfolded. The fight over Moses' body wasn't about a dead man. It was about preventing living testimony that would confirm Jesus Christ is law and prophets' fulfillment. Satan didn't just want to create an idol. He wanted to remove crucial witness from the future, to steal prophetic confirmation before delivery. But he failed. God's plan moved forward exactly as designed. Moses stood there glorified, speaking with Messiah, proving that what God protects cannot be stolen, no matter how fierce the battle. If this revelation has opened your eyes to spiritual warfare happening all around us, if you've gained insight into why the enemy fights so hard for seemingly small details in God's plan, then I need you to act right now. Share this message with someone who needs to understand that every detail of our lives matters in God's eternal purposes. Subscribe so you never miss these deep biblical truths. And leave a comment telling me what shocked you most about this story. The battle is real. The enemy is strategic. But God's purposes will always prevail. Always.